Hey, what's up everybody? Video 44 coming at you with another video. Alright, so it's a nice day out here. It's about 2:44 in the afternoon. And I really don't know what I want to do with my day. To be completely honest with you guys, normally I'd be like, let me hurry up and get back in because the game is coming on. But it's the Pacers and the Celtics game 4. I do not care about that series anymore. I don't think most people do. Let's go ahead and let the Celtics get in there. And hopefully Kyrie and Luka will be ready to take them down. I'm looking forward to the finals at this point. Both of those series, conference final series, they're pretty much done already. So I'm treating it, like this is 1 o'clock in the afternoon rather than closer to 3. I didn't really have any intentions of staying in the house, but I didn't have any plans of leaving the house. That's what's taking so long. It's kind of stuck in between, like, because of how much it costs to get everywhere. So doing my little LA going to Hollywood thing doesn't seem to make as much sense anymore, unless I have specific things I need to do on that side of town. Walking back and forth every day just to get there, it's gonna cost a little more now, so I'm not cool with that. But just the same, gotta adjust with it, just to it rather. So that's really what it is. But if anything, I just got sick of being in the house just now. Got a little cooped up in there. It felt stuffy to me to a degree. I did some art this morning, that kind of thing. Talked to my boy T a little bit, talked a little Laker ball, and looked up, it was already past noon by the time I was done with breakfast. And so it was one of those situations where I didn't know what I was gonna do. I wasn't really sure how I wanted to play today, but I'm out now. I'm definitely happy to be out. Some fresh air. It's a little warm, but it ain't super hot, but we're getting to that summertime feeling, so yeah, man. Honestly, all of the images that are coming out of Gaza are still on my mind, just like it is most people. Looking on Instagram, and a lot of people are calling out the people who've been silent, who have voices and are not using them. I just think it's one of those situations where if it took this for us to get to that point, that's a shame, because we have been on this channel wanting people to speak and calling people out for a long time now. We've been calling people out for months. So while these images yesterday were horrible, at this point, and I hate to sound like this, but death is death at this point. When you've seen all that I've seen, paying attention to this for the last 200 and God knows how many plus days, 230 days, seeing a man holding up a child without a head, it's just another baby dead, man. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. That's how desensitized I am to these images. I understand people who are not. I understand that these are the worst images, but when you see so much death, it's just more death. How many different ways can you show me this? And I never thought I would get to this point. I lived almost 40 years of life without being like this. The images I'm used to seeing today would have caused me nightmares last year. But when you see genocide in your phone, slowly but surely, every single day, I was already outraged to the degree that I'm hearing a lot of people outraged, as were many of us who have been talking about this. The outrage that some of these folks are feeling are because they are just now catching up. But the reality is, if you would have seen 4 or 5 dead children in your phone every day for the past 230 days, images like the one we saw yesterday is just more of the same, man. And this is why it's so important that people speak up. This is why it's so important that people understand the difference between someone like us who are talking about this and someone who's avoided this for the sake of their own business. The trauma that we've gotten used to. It ain't normal, fam. And I find myself frustrated to a degree because I'm thinking about the people that I know of that aren't speaking. And it's like, what are they supposed to say? that I'm not saying myself. Maybe they don't feel it. Maybe they don't. You know, I'm getting to a point where I'm starting to think that people don't really care, bro. Like, maybe that's like a redundant thing to say, given the fact that people have shown us for the last 230 days they don't care. But like, maybe it's really that deep to where if it doesn't align with their interests in life, if it's not brought to their front doorstep, then they truly could care less. That's what I'm starting to think. It's not that people are silent in a sense that they are scared of what's going to happen if they don't speak. It's that they don't care to speak. This ain't that serious to them. So what? Some people are dying on the other side of the country. People are always dying somewhere. You got to make them care. They're controlled by their own interests, more or less. Good portion of the population out west, we care about what we care about. I look at my Laker family. All this is going on in the world. Yeah, that's cool. There's always something going on in the world, and the Lakers got something going on, so we're interested in that. I look at my hip-hop community. Yeah, all of that's going on, but you know Drake dropped the song with Sexy Red, right? Don't we love it? Don't we hate it? Doesn't it suck? That's like the parameters of their concern. Because their bills still got to be paid. They still got to go to work. Grandma's still sick. Sister's still strung out, or whatever people got going on in their personal lives, to where they really genuinely don't care for what's going on outside of that. They've had their heart broken. Their wife or husband left them. The person before that broke their heart. You just get hit so many times by the enemy in life, and you have so many things that distract you from that, to it's like people don't really give a crap about what's going on outside of their parameters. They only care about what they're interested in. And since there's so much for them to throw their souls into and interest, that's what they're going to roll with. Because if they have to focus on what it is that you're talking about, they're going to feel hopeless. They're going to feel like that's too much for them. They're going to feel like it's useless, because no matter what, when they go outside, all they see is happiness, freedom, or horrible thoughts, or whatever their circumference is. So to be worried about something that's going on the other side of the earth, they're not being shamed into caring about that. They don't see any of it going on around them. The news is not telling them to focus on it necessarily, so they're not going to see the interest in rolling up and saying, yo, let's go outside and do something about it. It's not Black Lives Matter to where you see it plastered all over the propaganda floor of the NBA or something like that. So they're not interested in that. It ain't affecting their grandma who's out of country, so she ain't calling them, telling them that she gives a damn about this or that it's affecting her. So it's outside of their realm of concern. What they don't see is what I was describing in my last therapy session, and that lack of concern is going to bring some of that evil to your doorstep. And once people realize that you let them get away with this when you could have said something, now you not only have the enemy that did this, who has whatever God knows intentions upon you once they done dealing with the Palestinians, but you also have the people who were angry at you, who wanted this to stop for whatever their set of reasons, as people who are potentially going to be bringing violence to your doorstep someday. So it's like a lot of people don't know to care about something outside of their circumference, even though if they just do a little bit of thinking, or if they have a little foresight, they can see that it's going to matter tomorrow. The consequences of them being indifferent is going to be unbearable, no different than what it is that they ultimately don't want to deal with. And convincing people who are nestled in privilege, however much privilege they receive, the privilege to feel sorry for themselves and their own, who've never been taught to care about anything outside of their own, if anything, have been deterred from doing so by way of what is normal in our lives. Don't speak about them. Don't speak about them. Keep this situation quiet. Be quiet about this. Break this law. You got to be quiet about that. So a lot of people are within their daily lives cheating on this person, so you can't be. They're lying. We're surrounded by a bunch of people who are systematically lying within their own lives, lying to themselves about whatever, lying to others about whatever, keeping secrets of their own and others. Till it gets to the point where it's like, even if a person's not compromised systematically, from person to person to person, I'm starting to think most of y'all just compromised within your humanity. You don't care what happens outside in bigger, greater circumstances as it pertains to things outside of your circumference, because you're not that great of a human being within your circumference. Most of what it is that you're doing is bad any damn way. It's riddled in Satan's energy anyway. That's what I'm starting to think about a lot of people who are silent. They don't care because they're not good humans. They don't speak up for things that don't pertain to themselves because within themselves, there's not much to them. You lose faith in humanity. And so as much silence as I'm seeing, as much indifference as I'm seeing, as much, we're focused on us, and if it comes our way, we'll erupt, but otherwise we'll chill because it's not my business and I'm just going to deal with it, my own business. As much as that as we see, as much as that as I see, you just get to a point where you realize a lot of what is wrong is systematically in place, but some of what is carried forth in being wrong comes from each and every face. People just genuinely are too evil to do anything about something that has nothing to do with them. And those of us who are not are talking. We're already speaking. You understand what I'm saying? We're already talking. And we're listening to one another as we call out and say to one another, more needs to be done. The people that need to hear this aren't listening at all. They're not paying attention. They do not care. They're not going to care. And it's rude for you to bring that care to them. Hence how people are treated when they protest and disrupt. And I even say to myself, what's keeping me from saying all of what it is I know on platforms where these conversations are not prevalent, if not for some inner training that has taught me how not to be inappropriate. And to know that we're all nestled in that training, some of us more so than others. I know what's going on in Rafa. I also know it needs to be more of a prevalent conversation. But when I go to my hip hop forums, Brandon, is not talking about that. When I go to my Laker forums, Brandon, am not talking about it. And that is where the evil truly lies. That we are so indoctrinated in what is appropriate, which works in conjunction with the keeping up of things going the way that they've been going. And when those are the disruptions that are necessary to truly cause the change necessary, to truly raise awareness necessary, we need to bring the conversation to places where it would otherwise be inappropriate to bring it, so that those who are nestled comfortably away from that conversation are not forced to either be disrupted by it within their spaces of comfort for which they go to stay away from things that don't pertain to them. Force them who are complicit to feel uncomfortable within the truth that is provided. I'm not going on my forums talking about Palestine. Why? Because it's just disrespectful. People don't come there for politics. That right there, that type of training is how Zionists have been able to keep this crap going. You do enough of that in little pockets of social media. You have enough appropriate thinking as it pertains to, no, we're not talking about this over there. We're not talking about that over there. Not because we're conscious of it, but because it's rude. That for which we've convinced one another things are rude, that is what has been corrupted. Is what I'm coming to understand. because we have been a country that does things to people and then turns around and says we are sophisticated. So the workings of a person or the workings of a country or the workings of an environment that behaves that way, within the spaces that allows them to quote unquote behave properly, are the devil nestled in those spots of what is appropriate and what is not. He's hidden himself in those spaces behind our shame, behind our desire to be appropriate, behind our desire to come off as sane, and he's effectively kept us from having the conversations necessary. So for some, having a conversation about Gaza is equivalent to farting in public, or not taking a shower for a week at a time and then going to a public space. You got to be wired a certain way to even want to do that. Otherwise, you're going to feel shamed, unclean. Within those pockets of training, within those pockets of norms, the devil is able to effectively hide amongst us. He's effectively able to do certain things, and we won't question whether or not it's fine for him to do those things, because questioning him in that way is equivalent to ignoring your hygiene, cursing around a bunch of children, pushing somebody down the steps even, things that you would literally never do. This is in that category in our brains in the Western world. We've been trained very, very specifically how to not disrupt and how to be uncomfortable with those who do, even if that disruption is absolutely life or death. Even if the difference between people suffering, children even suffering, is life or death. And so for those of us who are wired enough to be a little crazy, we can step outside of that. Those of us who are wired a certain way to where we don't mind being uncomfortable to a degree, we can go through that for which makes you sane and say the things that you're uncomfortable with saying. But most of us, within our definition and our inner understandings of sane, are not going to be disruptive, are not going to question certain things, are not going to move around in a certain way that questions or challenges satanic energy amongst us. We think we're good people and we believe in God, but we have not found a way to evolve past what is cloaked in front of us, which is you have to be rude as you otherwise would interpret it to be in order to effectively reach the people that need to be reached, who more or less are confined by the same thing. This is what I've come to learn. Because this is a self-righteous, selfish nation that has been able to function in the presence of great injustice, going unchecked. This is stolen land. Half of the people who are walking amongst us have had either that land stolen from them or were doing the stealing. And we got to find a way to live amongst one another. So of course there are certain things over time, mind you, this ain't overnight. This has been going on for 400 years that we had to just be uncomfortable with or learn how to be comfortable within. So of course certain conversations couldn't be had, because then it was going to force us into a position that is otherwise challenging of the system itself and ultimately how we got to this point in the first place. So over time, white supremacy has to effectively make it rude for us to challenge it. It had to make it unclean and utterly uncouth for us to challenge it. So when we have sports conversations, you have a great facet of voices that are going to tell you that politics is not a place for sports. Why? To rub that in on this side of the fence. And they're going to tell you the same thing when it's time to have conversations in school. You can't pray in school. You can't talk about this in school. You can't talk about politics amongst one another. Why? To further rub this crap in. You can't talk about religion and politics. In our society, it is rude to do that. Why? Because everybody's different in that regard, and you're going to start uncomfortable conversations that could be disruptive in regards to it. But politics and religion ultimately affect all of us. Some of the most important things that we need to be conversing about, we've effectively taught ourselves to believe is rude to converse about. This falls in that category. Palestine falls in that category. So people are not going to talk about Palestine because it brings up religion and politics. And anybody that talks about it is being rude and disruptive. I'm telling you, I'm starting to get to the crux, the real crux of how we're able to be and how all of this was able to be done under our noses while effectively keeping us in a space where we only care but so much, but not enough to do what's necessary. It's because the necessary doings are nestled in spots in our brains and our training and our social norms that are ultimately meant to make us wonder if we're being disruptive or being unclean in doing so. You're not only fighting against the reality of circumstances, you're fighting against the utter training of our society to function in a space where hypocrisy is normal, where it is accepted that things and people are treated differently. How many of you find the urgency to hurry up and get to a reservation and give a Native American person a good portion of what it is you have because it was all stolen from them? How many of y'all actually think that's something that's sane to do? How many of y'all walked up to a black person and thanked them for the sacrifices of slavery? These are weird, crazy things. And yet, if we're balancing things out, we will realize that it's not crazy at all because of what has been taken from these people. It ever dawned on you that you should have some urgency about seeing somebody on the street without something to eat? Hell no. You walk past homeless people every day. Maybe you give them $1, maybe you don't. But within the confines of what it is that's a good person, it's not required that you have urgency about somebody else's suffering. And you do enough of this around us. It's why they allow homelessness around us, so that we wouldn't have that urgency about anything that they're doing outside of this place. They could feed every single person, bring wealth to every single person based on how much they've cheated the rest of the world. Congo alone could make it so that all of us are millionaires if they were divvying out that money evenly. But they can't do that because they have to make us feel as if it's normal for people to be imbalanced. That's why communism is such a bad word in this country, because communism, from my understanding, brings about a certain understanding that everybody should be getting the same amount, regardless of how much work they put in. Now, maybe that doesn't work in this world of capitalism, but in the spirit of fairness, somewhere in there, we should be doing better with that than we would with this. But that's the worst taboo thing in the world, if you ask the average American person. Communist is a bad word. Muslim follows with the word terrorist. And all these different things that are indoctrinated in our understanding based on the training of our minds and how it has been so little challenged throughout the course of time. If it weren't for artists who've given us hints about this understanding, we wouldn't have any inclination. So if people weren't paying attention to that art, where would that inclination otherwise come from? The only people who are speaking the truth are disruptors and unclean individuals and people who otherwise don't have the koof necessary to function amongst us. They've controlled our brains the whole time. Same thing I said about what's going on in Israel. They don't ask the hard questions because of something like this. All you got to ask is two critical thinking questions, but their understanding of what is normal based on the long-term embedded truths about how to be cool and how to be societal, has kept them from actually asking the right questions that would otherwise debunk all the lies that they've been believing. And it takes only a special person wired a certain way to step outside of that comfort to be able to ask the right question. We have different indoctrination here, which is why we look at what they do and see it as weird. But the reality is they're in a space where they're taught it's okay to kill terrorist babies, so long as they're the kids of terrorists. Educated individuals who've accomplished whatever they have, who are able to live amongst society, will never have these conversations with you because they're riddled in religion and politics, the two most important things you will never talk about. So you never know who's thinking this way and who's not amongst you, because we've all agreed to not find out. And in not finding out, we're not able to have the simple conversations to say, yo, I got something different in my head that can debunk all of your nonsense. We don't have those conversations because it's rude to. But what if it wasn't rude at all? What if it wasn't uncouth at all? What if asking those conversations were essential to us being able to function? See, I think 100 years from now, someone's going to listen to this and think I'm weird for even talking like this. Hopefully, because all of this would have otherwise been so far behind them that it wouldn't even make any sense for people to talk this way. But the reality is, what it is I just gave you was a peek into the American mindset. Indoctrinated to us by our news, by our artists, all controlled by the Zionists, who want us to think, feel, and move a certain way, and not think, not feel, and not move a certain way as well. So as we continue to try to make some sense of what's going on around us and the behavior of people around us who refuse to speak, we realize that they've all been trained the same way that I'm speaking of now. Trained not to. Trained to care, but only to a point. But to not be able to effectively identify that point at all. Can't see it. I know I'm a good person. I go to church every day. I gave $20 to this person who needed the money. I was able to help a lady across the street, this, that, and the third. But you want me to talk about what? Zionism? Oh no, it's rude to talk about Jewish people. See? It's only been about 5 minutes since we know Zionism and Jewish people were separated. We don't talk about the Jews. We taught that it's taboo to even do that. And every bit of the forms that we find ourselves listening to basketball, listening to hip hop, listening to whatever crap that we pay attention to, it is almost understood that the people behind those individuals who do business behind those individuals are Zionists / Jewish, and you don't talk about them. And if you do talk about them, then you're going to have your Kyrie treatment, you're going to have your Kanye treatment. So within what is coof and what is rude is the understanding that these people control things, but you don't talk about them. And then you find out that's not who they are. They hid behind Jewish people. They hid behind that identity. Effectively hid. That's not who they are. Those people exist amongst us, but that ain't who it is you've been told you should not talk about, or you should not ask questions about, or dare you. That ain't Jewish people. And see, that's the point. Because you wouldn't even get into a space where you would begin to question Jewish people, you would never then ask the question if the people who own these things would masquerade as if they're Jewish people. Because you ain't never even approaching that aspect of the conversation. And as a result, they get to masquerade as Jewish people, tell you not to talk about Jewish people, and refer to themselves as Jewish people without actually following anything good that Jewish people really believe in. They doing all the evil stuff that they want to do. And anytime you say anything about them, it's like, you're being anti-Semitic. No, you're not Semitic at all. You're a Zionist. That's it. Entirely different group. Masquerading as if you can be them when you're not them. But dare I even question any of that? It's rude. It's just flat out rude for me to. And as a result, No one wants to talk about the things that are necessary to keep children from being beheaded. They don't want to talk about it. Why? Because you're entering in so many different layers of what is inappropriate amongst us. You see how many layers of inappropriate I had to get through just to get to the crux of what is actually happening there? But the truth is always on the tips of our tongues, because these people stole the land we're on. I'm a black dude whose family was slaves and slave owners and natives and all different types of other stuff. Mostly put together, probably not by love, but by rape. And even now, you have to question the intentions. They appeal to our vanity. Oh, we don't want you to say certain words because we don't want to trigger you. You're not triggering me, you're desensitizing me. You're putting me in a position to where I can't effectively express myself in a way that drives home the point. Because I'm going to be offensive to the people who've experienced these things, who would otherwise be triggered by words. Yeah, that's one functionality of me being silent in regards to certain words. Another functionality is pouring sugar over bad stuff. Blowing smoke at something that otherwise is really, really funky. Because if you don't use those words have power, and they don't drive home the point. If you can't say words like rape and sexual assault and various different things. In the world we're in right now, you can't say those words. It's because those who are in place controlling what is otherwise normal and what is rude and what is cool don't want us to drive home the point about various things, because they don't want solutions for those things. They don't want us to be strong enough to face those things as a society and having those conversations. Definitely not in forms that they control that otherwise supposed to be meant to pull us away from those things. And they will use our vanity and use our sense of self-entitlement as a means of driving home the point of us not having these conversations and not using those specific words. Your love for you. Oh, we don't want to offend you. We don't want anyone else to offend you. It's all about you. Let's custom everything about you. Everything is about you. You're the center of the universe. So whatever's happening outside of you, guess what you think of? You got to go through layers and layers and layers of norms to get from behind, in order to effectively be a solution to anything that have nothing to do with you. They've trained us, yo, like freaking dogs. I ain't gonna say this about the president. Why? Because I'm a terrorist if I do. No, I'm not. If the president is engaging in terrorism and children are losing their heads because of this idiot, then why can't I say, yo, we need to treat him like a terrorist, put him where he goes? If not for some entity that's corrupting the nature of my natural opinion. Corrupting the nature of my natural opinion. Corrupting the nature of my natural reaction. Corrupting the nature of my ability to describe things as I see them. Not with bad intentions, but with good ones. But when they define the word bad as to mean something that goes against them, when they define the word good as a means of something that they want to do, then of course you're going to always find yourself on the wrong side of right and wrong and good and bad, because it's not effectively brought about by your understanding, but more so about what is appropriate and your ability to move within the parameters of what's appropriate. This is why so many Americans are silent. This is why so many Western world people refuse to speak up, even though they genuinely would be horrified by the things that they see. It's not appropriate. Everyone who's my boss would be offended and have come down on me and reprimand me for speaking on this. Why? Because all of them are compromised one way or another by the same entity from which I've been describing. Compromised all the way up to the president. All the way down to your police officers, all corrupted by Israel. So of course, over time, with that in place, will be the protection of Israel within it. No, you can't question who we're standing behind, pretending to be. No, you're not going to say certain words that drive home your frustration with what it is that we are doing that shouldn't be done. No, you're not going to question whether or not
whatever it is that others are talking about could have any validity to it whatsoever. And yes, you see the debunking of the lies that are being told, but you're still not going to question whether or not you should be offended by the lies or trust the liars. Why? Because it's rude for you to question such things, and you refuse to be rude. You refuse to be rude. You start thinking there's something wrong with you. And within the circles of your society, you're going to start thinking about something wrong with the people around you for being rude, for being unclean. So if I've effectively convinced you that something that you need to do is unclean or rude, guess what you're going to do? Not that. Not that. You'll figure something else out, but damn you be dirty, damn you be rude, damn you be uncouth or inappropriate. That's what's being corrupted. That right there, the crux of that there is what is wrong with us. There's nothing wrong with being clean. There's nothing wrong with being appropriate. There's nothing wrong with being sane or perceiving the world around us as accepting us. But if the things that we need to do are nestled within the spaces that challenge those things, and we're ineffective in getting done what needs to be done, we don't even amongst ourselves begin to question how and why things aren't getting done properly. It's because those things are corrupted. Those things that need to be done are nestled in spaces that are otherwise considered taboo, inappropriate, rude, illegal, and all these different other dare you not cross type of things. You wouldn't dare not cross. You wouldn't dare. It's no different than standing and waiting for a light to change. You're not going to go run a red light. Not only because of what could go wrong for doing so, but because you've been trained not to. Your sensibility as a human being, your understanding of what it means to be responsible is wrapped up in you following such things. Not just your safety, your esteem. No, I'm not going to press the gas on a red light unless I'm drunk. No, I'm not going to bring up Palestine unless I'm drunk. No, I mean, like, of course, I mean, Hamas, that's the only appropriate thing to say. I mean, the news is telling you it's Hamas, so of course it's Hamas. Never mind all these people around us who clearly care more than we do, telling us something opposite than what they do. But we don't trust none of those instincts that tell us, yo, these people give a damn. Maybe what they're saying makes some sense. Look how far they're willing to take it. Maybe we should look into what they're saying. Hell no. Why? Because they're being rude. They ain't showered in 3 days. That's the equivalent to what that is, as we've been describing. They haven't showered in 3 days. Why would I want to be anywhere near those rude individuals with bad hygiene? Why would I want to be near those uncouth individuals? Why would I want to be anywhere near those individuals who are outside of what comes naturally to me? I dare not. You're going to think I'm crazy if I handle around those crazy people, and that's what ends up happening to us. From mind to mind to mind to mind, in the environment for which that is enforced, you see people saying, of course not. I ain't speaking on that. Even if I were to speak on that, I'm going to make sure I qualify it with Israel first. I hate what happened on October 7th. This crap been going on for 75 years. I know it has, but it's rude for me to say that. It's rude. Dare I not want to offend the people around me who believe otherwise, even though if there were any other circumstance for which that applied, we would want to bring the truth to one another. Hey, yo, friend, your shoe's untied. Kneel down and tie your shoe before you slip over your shoe. That's the equivalent of that. When someone believes a lie, hey, yo, you're going towards something that's going to have you falling off a cliff. You might not want to do that. Hey, yo, you're doing something that's going to make somebody not believe that you are okay. Maybe you should look a different direction. You're doing something that's going to reflect poorly upon yourself, friend. Why don't you hear me out before moving any further? We're not going to allow that to enter the equation as it pertains to this subject. We're not going to look at it that way. I'm telling you, man, it's disgusting. But it's understandable when you start really getting to the crux of why it is. Human training. Just like doggy training, just like ferret training, any other training, is human training. We've been taught how to only but so far take our concern when it comes to certain things that don't have anything to do with us. If it don't have anything to do with me, I only care but so much. And that's appropriate. I can still sleep at night believing I'm a good person. Why? Because I follow the rules that are in place for me to follow. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. The wheel is already in place. I just need to know how to spin it properly. And there lies the biggest problem. The wheel ain't a wheel. It's a gun, and it's pointed at children, and you're shooting it. But I guess it's okay because we don't look crazy to the people amongst us. We're not challenging something that's going to make people say, damn, that's a nut job. Let me fire him. Let me ease him out of the social circles that he most wants to be in. Let me not call that person on their birthday. They're a little nuts. We don't want to bring them to the function. They're going to be disruptive. And dare us Americans ever want to be in that space where we're, God forbid, outcasted. After all, everything's about us, right? The whole world is functioning around giving us what we want and making it so that we can get the money necessary to pay for everything that we want, because we want is the first thing. You know, in dealing with my mental health, me and my therapist are trying to get to the crux of why me personally, this person, functions in such a way to where if I don't want to do something, it cannot be done. I don't want to go to school. So for years, I couldn't convince myself to go to school. I didn't want to go to work. So for years, I couldn't convince myself to go to work. Why is want the end all be all to the functionality of the person when there are things within the wants that I also would want if I were to just, or things within those things that I don't want to do that I also would need if I would just, you understand what I'm saying? Why is want so important? Why is comfort so important? Well, I'm telling you, because I'm going through that, I'm able to look around at all of us and say the same thing in a different way. Why would it be that fitting in would be so primary to the functionality of our humanity, of our choices, our willingness and unwillingness to do, say, or what have you? A lot of us are fearless in the sense that we will swallow poison, drink liquor, eat bad foods, go on daredevil missions, break the law, all different types of stuff, but are fearful of what happens when we're outcasted by our peers, fearful of what happens when we challenge the Zionists who appear to be Jewish. We are fearful of things that can't do as much harm to us as we do to ourselves with our corrupted wants. Hop into a car and drive 110 miles an hour and you want to tell me that you're fearful? You go on all kinds of different daredevil missions. Some of y'all got jobs that risk your lives every day, but you want to tell me you're fearful? No, you're trained. Half of us risk our lives every time we jump in a car, every time we get on a plane. What's the difference between dying this way and dying that way? What's the difference between what would otherwise bring about fear within us in this dangerous situation versus something that otherwise would be considered dangerous in a different way? I think it's rude to ask that question. I think it's effectively rude for us to even consider those questions being necessary to bring up. But if we take just a couple seconds to look around and seeing what's not happening or what it is that we'd otherwise want to change, we'd find out that it's in those spaces that would be considered the wrong thing that we need to find ourselves in order to effectively change the things that need to change. That your foot does not, in fact, fall off if you bring up a conversation that maybe someone thinks is rude. That you will not, in fact, be outcasted by everyone you love if you show some humanity for something that doesn't pertain to you. That it'll be okay. It really will. But you got to face that fear. No different than facing any other phobic circumstance. That's what I'm here to say, man. I'm the crazy one, but I'm crazy in the right way because I'm able to skate around my concern for what other people will say when I say free Palestine. Children should not be without their heads, ever. And we shouldn't believe people who don't provide any proof, especially when they've proven themselves to be liars in other areas. And once their lies have been debunked about the things that they've lied about, we shouldn't further support them in their efforts in committing a genocide. I should literally be okay for saying that. I think it's okay. I really do. That's why I'm nuts. I'm the crazy one. I actually, believe it or not, think there's something wrong with those things. I know, strange. BDF 44, I thank y'all for watching. I'm out.